Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live stream. And we have a familiar guest joining us. Welcome, Phil. It's been a few weeks since you've been on, isn't it? But Phil's been on the live stream many, many times. So it's great to see you.
It's lovely to be here, as always. It's getting getting more and more difficult to join the live streams with my ever-growing family.
Yeah. Now Phil's house is one of the most characterfully furnished I've ever been in. But he's found the one little bit of bare wall in the whole house, I think, to have as the background for this video. Is your camera mobile, by any chance?
No.
Oh, we could have. That'd be nice one week if you wanted to give us a little tour of your hand-built house up in Durness. That would be great.
That would be lovely.
About making that a bit.
I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that one day.
You built it yourself, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah. Everything from scratch. With the exception of the foundation, I had some help with the foundation, and I had some help with the plumbing. But apart from that, I did everything myself.
Right. So all the electricals you did yourself.
Yes. And the thing is, I don't know anything about electrics, but it was so difficult to get the electrician to come over because I live in such a remote area and the electrician is always incredibly busy. So at one point I was on my knees begging him. I said, please come up for half an hour, explain to me how electricity works, and I'll do it myself, and then you just check if I did the right thing. And that's exactly what we did. So I laid out the cables everywhere and then he connected them up. So I had some help, but most of it I had to do myself, unfortunately.
So you're doing things like with an iPad next to you with YouTube on it, telling you how to put the bricks on or something? Or...
No, to be honest, building when you design a house, you get the instructions from the engineer, and they are so detailed that it's almost like following an IKEA like description. It's so incredibly detailed. It's brilliant. So you need to be ambitious, and you need to be you need to be capable of building stuff. If you have two left hands, then you won't be able to do it. But if you kind of know how to build stuff and you have the information from the engineer, then you should be able to build your own house.
Yep, I can tell you, it's still standing to this day, and it's great. It's great. Well, we'll maybe have a video tour one day. But lots to talk about. Do fire those comments in. If you've got any comments yet, not just yet. I'm sure some will be on the way very soon. We've got some fairly big topics to cover, but we'll just skate over a couple on the way to those. Just a reminder about this one. I mean, Trump abolishing the United States Department of Education, like the Federal Department of Education. And that's something very much in line with our policies. We would abolish Education Scotland. Not because it's like full of bad people or whatever. It's just because it's very much dominated by a particular political ideology, by a particular philosophy of education. And they impose that on schools around the country. And ultimately, I think they're detrimental to the standard of education. So I've heard Trump saying basically he thinks that the education department in America harms standards in schools. And I think he's probably right. I think here, Education Scotland, overall, I would be pretty confident that they harm standards in schools. So we're spending money on these organizations in order to get inferior educational outcomes. And I think in this sort of case, it doesn't need tinkering with at the edges. We don't need to get our man in to be in charge of it. Just the whole thing can go. So that was great. Right, let's right, Phil's back. Just a bit of internet trouble there.
No, not at all. It was purely my mistake.
All right.
I take full responsibility.
Okay. Now, this is a fascinating one. Just a bit of background, and then Phil, over to you to see what you think. This was a sign held up by Rangers fans at a recent game. The Rangers and Celtic fans hold up provocative signs at matches, political messages, etc. But this one, Rangers Club has gone bonkers about it, banning fans, etc. I think UEFA as well has gone absolutely berserk. But neither of them seem to have explained what it means. And when I read it, I don't really know what it means. Phil, does it make sense to you?
So, to me, it seems like whoever designed the placard is probably a little bit informed about the culture war, but not intellectually. Doesn't intellectually understand which part of the culture war it belongs to what, so to speak. I think they should have said keep woke and foreign ideologies out, not woke foreign ideologies. In regards to foreign ideologies, I could think of Black Lives Matter, because that was imported from America, which really had nothing to do with us, but then was just copy and pasted into our world, which didn't make a lot of sense. I saw Black Lives Matter placards on Shetland, and I mean, how much problem with white police brutality against black people do they have on Shetland? Probably not a lot. But the whole concept of wokeness is a foreign concept which came from America. But when it says defend Europe, I think what they're referring to is probably Islam and external cultures that are coming to Europe and destabilizing the former dominant cultures in our countries. So I think it's not 100% clear what they mean. I would assume that the teams, or that the football games, that they probably have rules that you're not allowed to have any political messaging. But I assume if you were waving a rainbow flag, an intersectional rainbow flag, even with a raised fist, or maybe even something about free Palestine, you would probably not be expelled.
Yeah, I mean, I think, they've come down on this like a ton of bricks. It's not just you've broken the rule about political messages. It was this is an outrageous, bigoted, racist thing. I mean, I thought if you take the word woke out of it, keep foreign ideologies out, defend Europe, that sounds a bit like, no more Islamic immigration. Defend Europe. I would imagine that's the sort of thing that maybe some white nationalists could say, but maybe they couldn't. I mean, basically, it's just not clear what the thing means. But what frustrated me is Rangers and UEFA, whatever, if you're going to issue statements really coming down hard on this, you've surely got to explain what you think it means. It's like Emperor's New Clothes. Everyone's jumping up and down about how terrible it is.
But the thing, the problem is they're not interested what it means. It's just the other side. It's the forbidden fruit. It's the forbidden side. Guten Abend, Alejandro. It's the forbidden side, and it really doesn't matter what they say. It's perceived as being on the right side, so it has to be destroyed. And then that's a topic that I want to talk about with you later on in our last segment.
Yes, that was an interesting little episode there. Here's another interesting episode. You've probably seen the video of our little pro-life thing at Chalmers Clinic. People think it's illegal because it's in the buffer zone, but it's not because the clinic's closed. Some sort of far left activist, Antifa, communist types came and stole some more placards. One of the blokes sort of took a half-hearted swing at me when I was taking his photograph. But Phil, you weren't able to travel down, obviously. What did you make of the whole affair?
First of all, I think it's wonderful and amazing that you guys are doing it. For me personally, I think these protests should happen both in the city center on the high street, so not anywhere close to a abortion clinic, because I think more people will see the placards in the city center. But I think having these demonstrations close to or right in front of an abortion clinic is great to raise the profile. In one of the videos you mentioned that You were criticized that it was a PR stunt, and I would say in parts that is correct, and that's good. That's good. It's brilliant, and it's wonderful that the other side doesn't understand the law. So it creates more friction, and it's a topic that needs friction, as you correctly said in one of the videos. What we don't want is apathy. We want people to actually talk about it and think about it, even though at the moment the majority of people are per default, because they have never really thought about it, are per default pro-abortion. We have to start talking about it. And obviously what's happening in America is absolutely wonderful, because a topic that seemed settled for most people is being reopened. And I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. But sometimes people say to me about the Families Party that they say, it'd be really good if you talked about such and such a topic more, or you try to emphasize this sort of topic, which is fine. You know, we try to do that. But ultimately, when it comes to media coverage, we don't get media coverage for what we want media coverage about. You know, if we issue a statement tomorrow saying we're having a new campaign about the importance of marriage, so, you know, invite Richard Lucas onto your studio and he'll do an interview with you and you can do reports over it in your newspaper. I mean, forget it. None of that is going to happen. You're going to get zero coverage. If we stood with our placards in the town centre, I mean, great. You know, you meet a lot of people see you, and that's all well worthwhile, but there'll be no media coverage. But sometimes you just get the opportunity where, for whatever reason, you can get the media coverage. And this seems an opportunity because Gillian Mackay doesn't understand her own law. The media, particularly at the national, don't understand the law. The police do, but they don't want to say. I think the police fear they'd be... Well, I guess it's not the police's job to give legal advice, is it? It's not that. The police's job is to arrest criminals, not particularly to give legal advice. So it's an unusual opportunity that we've spotted, I suppose. We've stumbled across it. That there's a way that what we do gets attention, where we do something very mild, standing there with placards, but then other people turn it into a big event.
Now,
how about our counter protesters?
the Antifa people in civilian clothes.
Yeah, Antifa unmasked.
Yeah, exactly.
The pro-life chain in Edinburgh, which is on the 26th of April, organised by Spuck, would encourage anyone to come with that. It's just on the other side of the road from the Usher Hall. I think last year they had, this might not quite be right, but it was roughly twice as many people as the year before, which was very, very encouraging. It was a really big thing. There's a Catholic service before it, and there's a sort of evangelical service before it as well. They're two different churches. Then people come together for the chain. It's very good. A lot of people. But on the other side of the road, a couple of times, you have communists come and display. They've got the hammer and sickle flags, and they're the same sort of people there. So
now obviously you don't want to. It's possible, but on the other side, it's their violence and their intolerance, and the more unreasonable their reactions are, the better it is for our cause.
Yes.
Even though it can be quite scary and even dangerous. What's his name? There is a guy. He always walks around with a billboard. Billboard
Chris.
Billboard Chris, exactly. And obviously he gets the most attention when something outrageous happens to him, when the police try to stop him, even though he doesn't do anything wrong, or when people attack him. That's when he gets the most attention, and when he has constructive conversations. So these are the two good outcomes. The worst outcome is when nobody cares.
Yeah, absolutely. Could see the honeymooners made it. Yeah, so that's Taylor and Johnny, second, third from the right. They got back from the honeymoon the morning of the event, and they came over. So that was
wonderful.
Was
that's brilliant.
Nice to see them. Okay, right, now we've got out of order there. So let's go to the topic that you wanted to bring up in particular. That's the a lot of people have been talking about this Adolescence film that neither of us have watched, I have to say, but we've both heard enough about it, Phil in particular, to know what it's about, and there's been a lot of commentary about it. So take it away, Phil. Tell us about it first of all.
So Adolescence is a UK produced television series, limited series. So there will only be one season, and it's about a boy who kills a girl, who stabs a girl to death, and then the aftermath of that, the boy being questioned by the police, and the parents having to deal with the fact that their child is a murderer. And the question is, what have they done wrong? Were there signs that they ignored, and so on and so forth. Now, it's supposedly very well done, and I saw some snippets, and especially the young actor who plays the murderer, he seems to be doing an amazing job acting. But there are two controversies about this television show. One of the controversies is that this TV show was in parts inspired by a real case, and I wrote down the names. So there was a teenager called Hassan Sentamu, or Sentamu, and he killed a girl called Eliane Adam. And so that happened in Croydon. And that was one of the stories that inspired this television show. Now, people that looked it up, they immediately noticed that the race was swapped. So the murderer in this case, in the real case, was a black boy, and we all know that currently the big issue with knife crime is predominantly non-white male youngsters.
Yeah, and that would be victims and perpetrators, I would imagine.
Exactly, 100% true. Exactly. And the fact that they race swapped the perpetrator, and that they made the reasons for this boy being aggressive all about the manosphere and incel culture. Incel stands for involuntary celibacy. So they gave it a completely different political spin. They blamed the white working class boy, and they made it all about the manosphere, and about the boy being an incel. Now, it's a 13-year-old boy. Every 13-year-old boy should be an incel.
Yeah.
So it makes no sense. It makes no sense. And the producers and main actor in the TV show, they are now going to a lot of television shows, and they're advocating for the TV show being shown in Parliament and also being included in the curriculum, so that children are being educated and teachers are being educated about the evil danger of the manosphere, because that's the biggest problem that we have right now, even though there is literally no such thing as violence from the manosphere. It practically doesn't exist. There were 2 cases of nut jobs in America, and I think one in Canada, where people did something awful, but it's a non-issue, really.
I find it fascinating hearing people talking about this, and they're talking about it as though it's a true story. They're saying, like, we've now discovered what's really going on. The truth has come out. I'm thinking, hang on a minute. I mean, they say the actors were good. Maybe they were a bit too good. People are thinking it's real. But
I want to say something about it. It would not even shock me if this TV show was co-sponsored by certain governmental organizations. Now, people that think, oh, that sounds extremely like conspiracy theory. The thing is, the government is investing into social conditioning. We know that that's really happening. And when you watch the BBC, obviously, a lot of what we see on the BBC and other programs is social engineering. The fact that that more and more minorities, sexual minorities, ethnic minorities are pushed on the forefront. The fact that the bad guys are always white people. When I watch a TV show with like a crime TV show with my wife, I always say, "Oh, I know who the bad guy is," because, and she asks, like, "Who is it?" "Oh, that guy," because it's the only white guy in the show, and it's usually right. And in the past, so I love horror movies, and in in the 50s and 60s in America, they produced a lot of horror movies, like some of the names are Body Snatchers or Invasion from Mars or The Children. And all of these movies were about external force, usually an alien force, coming in and either brainwashing or replacing people so that they don't have emotions anymore and they just function to serve like in a hive mind, so to speak. And that was government propaganda against communism. And you can actually see that through the decades, how certain genres in movies are becoming more and more dominant for reasons of social engineering. I mean, how often nowadays do you see in a TV show an intact family with a father and a mother who are loving towards their children? You practically never see that nowadays.
No, but you talk about the government pulling the strings, which may be true, but with Netflix, I mean, they do a pretty good job on their own, don't they?
That's very true.
They've got everything in place. Now, I watched something the other day. I probably shouldn't start saying this because I'm not going to be able to put this very clear. But someone's saying there's like a recurrent theme in film after film after film, where the story was about a society that had to break free from a set of rules and traditions in order to truly fulfill its destiny. It was very interesting. I can't remember the details for it to be very, very helpful. The thing I used to notice, when my sons were younger, you watch film after film, and the hero character would be a boy who was really wet and weak and feeble.
Yeah.
And there'd be a strong girl who helps him out and fights his battles for him. And eventually this sort of timid, sort of weakling boy just about manages to, I don't know, do whatever he needs to at the end. But like film after film had this same weak, insipid boy. And I got really fed up watching them one after another.
Absolutely. By the way, there was like a campaign. I think it was also part of a TV series, a campaign against sexual harassment in public transport. And the ad campaign was a young, thin, British white kid sexually harassing a black girl on a bus, and around her are these ethnically diverse other women that are all looking at the situation in fear. And this boy looks almost identical to the boy in Adolescence. So they're really using this, like, these skinny, poor little white kids as these monsters. It's completely ridiculous.
Yeah. This is a slight tangent, but when I was talking to Stuart Waiton the other week, he said that in adverts and the media in general, that if they have to include a white man, he was saying more and more often they've got ginger hair.
Yes.
So like ginger is a special minority that
Absolutely.
Okay, well, maybe a white man, but a ginger white man, well, at least that, I don't know, that ticks off a box or something.
It's
I've
even
never
with
noticed. Have you
women.
noticed that?
100%,
Right.
100% correct. It's even with women. So
Okay.
if they include a white woman, she often has red hair. Funnily enough, when it comes to superhero comic adaptations, they replace all the red-haired women with ethnic minority women. So in comic books, there is a red hair erasure. It's a big thing. It really exists. But when they have to use a white woman or a white person in a commercial, it's often a red-haired woman. In regards to men, if white men are portrayed, they are usually the incapable dads or the like a little bit overweight, ugly, incapable of doing certain things.
They need things explaining to them. Yeah, they need things explaining to them.
100%.
And there are contrasts with the person who really knows how it all works and uses the product that's been advertised. That's the general.
Actually, when I go to the cinema, I actually count the white people that I see in advertisement, and depending on how bad it is, I sometimes even clap. I'm like, oh, I found the white guy. And I say that quite loudly because I want to highlight the topic. And often afterwards, I go to the cinema stuff and very politely and respectfully just mention the issue, and I highlight that my wife is black and that my kids are obviously mixed race. But I tell them, I assume it's meant to be positive, but it will create a backlash, and my family will suffer from the anti-diversity backlash. So could you maybe communicate that less is more? So that's how I usually try to communicate it.
Well, I think with these things, I'm not interested. I mean, if I'm watching a film or whatever, ideally, I just couldn't care less what race they are. It's absolutely fine. I mean, the church I go to is massively racially diverse. But the reason I mind is because I know that behind it is an agenda. It's deliberate.
Oh, 100%.
100%. Thinking, oh, that's a coincidence. It just happens to be this. These are the sort of people in this film. Okay, yeah. Or this is a story about people in this context. And okay, no problem. But I know it's someone sat down and thought, right, this is what you're supposed to do.
I'm extremely sensitive to intentional messaging from behind. I'm extremely sensitive to that, and I can decipher things very well when I watch something which really annoys my wife, because she just wants to be entertained, and I'm like, unfortunately, you're being brainwashed.
Yeah. Now, just while we're on the subject of bias in films, I think that another bias that hasn't been adequately addressed in the public sphere yet is the problem of Mr. Lucases. Mr. Lucases are always baddies in films.
Really?
Yeah. And it started before me, so it's not a campaign to turn people against me. But can anyone name a positive Mr. Lucas in a film?
Interesting.
But then if you want baddies, I mean, there's a whole string of them. So keep your eye open for it.
They also quite often have German names. I mean, not so much nowadays, but in the past, a lot of. I think the baddie in Die Hard, he had a German last name, Freddy Krueger. So there were plenty of villains. To go back to the topic of adolescence, by the way. So it's not just that they want to push it in education, and maybe you can put up the link that I showed you, but they are also trying to push the online harms bill hard to restrict the internet in regards to feminist critical content. And we are simply just talking about feminist critical content, not obviously if there's anything that promotes violence, that should be taken down, no question about that. But everybody should be allowed to be critical towards cancerous ideologies. So what we're looking at right now is a guy who works for the Lotus Eaters. He put this out on X, on Twitter, and he said that these are documents that are being sent out to schools now in preparation to to work together with the movie Adolescence. So they're saying, oh, show the movie Adolescence in the school. It highlights the dangers of toxic masculinity and the manosphere, and then they provide page after page of information about the quote-unquote manosphere, with, I would say, misrepresentations or simplifications, and definitely vilifications of everything that opposes feminism.
Yeah, I think feminists love the likes of Andrew Tate and this, because they think they can then present themselves as the alternative to it. So they're bad, so that's why you need us. And if you disagree with us, you must be on their side. I mean, false dichotomy, really. It's fascinating.
Well, but the good thing is good. The good thing is that it will massively backfire, because teenage boys really do not like to be told what to do. So the more they go against Andrew Tate and against the manosphere, the more these boys will be interested in the manosphere and Andrew Tate. Now, I think that Andrew Tate says some good things, but I think overall he's a bad influence. So I would hope that the kids that first stumble across Andrew Tate after a short time find people that are more balanced, more eloquent, most of all more Christian, and less destructive. Because to me, Andrew Tate is the male equivalent of feminism.
Yeah, I was thinking of crowdfunding for some Ferrari or something, so I could compete with Andrew Tate online to try and be this more positive role model. Just while I'm on the subject of crowdfunders,
you should start going to the gym.
Excuse me.
Body shaming.
If Phil disappears in a while, he's said another offensive thing to me. I've just put our crowdfunder on. We've got a crowdfunder to replace our placards that were stolen on Saturday, and to get bigger and better, which we're going to do in future when our gear's stolen. But yeah, that's just looking at these things. So this is for circulation in schools. Classic trick going on here. The manosphere. No, wait. So online. So the manosphere is a collection of website, blogs, online forums promoting toxic masculinity, whatever that is, misogyny, that sounds bad, and opposition to feminism. So it's like you put something that sounds really bad, something that is really bad, then at the end of it, you put something that's, well, opposition to feminism. That's like me in many ways. It's like saying, I've got a new law. You're not allowed to kick people as they're walking on the street. You're not allowed to punch them, and you're not allowed to say something that's not nice to them.
Well, it's a little bit like these posters that are we are against all forms of sexual harassment, like upskirting and grabbing somebody and looking at a person.
yeah, exactly the thing. By the time you get to the one that actually not necessarily a bad thing, you're already in the, what's going on here? And that's exactly what was going on there. So opposition to feminism, I think that would be the two. I mean, this next bit is fascinating too. So imagine this is to be taught in schools. Toxic masculinity is a term that refers to gender stereotypes associated with how a man should act. Some of these stereotypes. Now, first of all, the idea of toxic masculinity, there is such a thing as I wouldn't use the term, but there are some stereotypes or traditions or cultures to do with masculinity that are negative.
It's very simple. Every behavior has a positive and a toxic version. Even love has a positive version and a toxic version. The toxic version would, for example, be possessiveness or extreme jealousy and stuff like, or being so loving that you don't give the partner any space to breathe. So anything can be toxic. There is obviously toxic feminine behaviors that of course exists, but yeah.
But that must be on a different worksheet, is it? There must be a different. But just look at this there. This is some of these toxic masculinity stereotypes say that men can't cry. Right? I'm not sure that's true, but what they're getting at is the idea of being a bit more stoic and trying to keep control of yourself, etc. That this is very negative. But look at the next one, that they're expected to provide for their family. What?
Social engineering. It's absolutely social engineering.
So they're jumping from a film about a boy stabbing someone. Okay, well, there are things like that in real life. But this is something to do with men being expected to provide for their family. I mean, that's just totally bonkers. I want boys to be taught that they've got the responsibility to provide for their family. I want them to be taught the exact opposite.
But I think it's the producer or director of the TV show Adolescence. I watched a bit of a clip from an interview with him where it was him and three boys, adolescent boys, being interviewed. And before I watched this clip, I just saw a photo of the guy, and I knew he was connected to Adolescence. And my immediate reaction, and I wrote a comment, I was like, I don't want a weak man like this to comment about masculinity. And then I saw him in this interview, and in the interview he said, he was antagonized and insulted online about his looks, and that he looks weak, and and I thought, yes, absolutely, because you look ridiculously weak. I think he's probably gay, and he's just the wrong person to school anybody about masculinity. I also don't want women to lecture me about masculinity, or men that, sorry to say, that are not very good at being leaders and that are being men. I want good role models. He's very clearly not a good role model. He might be a wonderful person, so there's nothing wrong with not being super masculine. He might be a really great person, but he's not. There's an author called Jack Donovan, and he said, and Jack Donovan, in one of his books, he said, this book is about how to be good at being a man, not about how to be a good man. These are two completely different things. And I agree. And Andrew Tate, for example, well, actually, I don't even think that he's very good at being a man. I think he's a caricature of a man. But let's just say, like, what he portrays is masculinity, but he doesn't portray goodness.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Let's see what else it says here. So this thing says it's a problem that they're expected to provide for their family, and then it says this can have a negative effect on men's mental health. So it's like saying to a man, your primary thing is your mental health, and then secondary to that is your responsibilities. Like you're centering on yourself is the main thing, and your external responsibilities, well,
it makes a lot of sense, because obviously boys are failing in school education and in job applications in the job market nowadays. So young women outperform men and out-earn men to a significant degree now, and so they are trying to construct a world where women and men are okay with the man not being the provider. Unfortunately, research shows those relationships usually don't last.
It does show that, and then you get to the point where they think about having kids, and it might be they think, well, we can't afford kids because the lifestyle or the house we bought or whatever, we need her income. So having kids is not an option. Or they do have kids, and then the kids don't really have much time with mother because you've got to work all the time.
But these couples not having kids again then ties in with the environment, the radical environmental movement that just wants depopulation. So this whole side, like feminism, extreme environmentalism, they are anti-humanist, sorry, not anti-humanist, anti-human, actually. And
what I don't understand is, why don't people concerned about climate change, I've never heard anyone say, well, in the longer term, we've got this problem sorted because the population of the earth is going to plummet. So basically there's a long-term plan in place. We're okay. Why does no one say that? Or say it in Scotland, for example.
Because they don't want to lose the urgency, because they're grifters. So they have you heard them talking about the massive increase in the polar bear population? No, of course not, because it goes against their narrative. So they can only mention things that are in favor of their narrative. As soon as there are positive changes, that would end their grift. So they can't say, well, actually the future looks okay because we have like population collapse. They can't say that. And they also can't say that countries that still have a lot of kids, like sub-Saharan Africa or India, that they are the bad ones. They also can't say that, because that would be racist.
Fertility rates are falling everywhere.
I know.
Even where they're very high, they're still. But anyway, well, we're getting off topic. Let's stick on topic here, right? The next, what else is going to be? Boys going to be taught, well, boys and girls taught in school. Misogyny, form of online hate, targets women and girls, promoted in different communities online, where influence brought a narrative that women should be treated as less than men. Are there any particular bits you want to pick out from these definitions?
No, really, not necessarily. I just wanted to highlight that they're putting more indoctrination in the school. So
yeah, now this is interesting. I've talked about Andrew Tate lots of times, and I'm extremely critical of him. But this says he believes women should belong to men. I have heard him say something along those lines. Shouldn't drive, shouldn't leave the house. He's also said that they should bear responsibility for their own sexual assaults. He's spoken out in favor of Russell Brand. I mean, that's an interesting one. Conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, and the Nazis questioning whether they were really the bad guy in World War II. Now, when I read those, most of those, I think, I'm not absolutely convinced. I'd want to see the evidence to see if that's not slightly exaggerated. He does say really outrageous things, but I'd like to just check.
I'm pretty sure he did come out in support of Russell Brand, as did I. Vehemently so.
Russell Brand as?
Russell Brand.
Yeah, but it came out as what? Right, so saying is all the accusations against him didn't matter or something.
Well, no, probably nonsense. The accusations, and just saying that people have the right. So first of all, I don't think that Russell Brand sexually assaulted these women. I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. That doesn't mean that his behavior it was morally correct, but those are two completely different things. Consensual, disgusting behavior is legal, and people can be criticized for that, but not legally persecuted for it. And he walked away from his past. And as a Christian, I believe in redemption and forgiveness, and he is a Christian, and I wish him all the best.
I would agree. I've talked about Russell Brand before. Just while we're on the topic of boys and the values of boys, whatever, I heard it increasingly. It's as though the point of fatherlessness, concern of fatherlessness, and the influence it has on boys in particular, which is pretty grave, more and more people seem to be willing to talk about this. It's become a bit more acceptable, but it still seems like people are less willing to talk about a key part of the solution, which is marriage, encouraging a culture of commitment to marriage. That still's not quite on the agenda, but the concern about fatherlessness, I think, is on the agenda. But the thing with fathers, if you say you're concerned about fatherlessness, I mean, where does that fit with lesbian parents?
The conversation in regards to fatherlessness will immediately be directed towards deadbeat dads. So they will say fathers have to take responsibility, completely ignoring all the fathers that are fighting to see their kids in cases of parental alienation.
Good point.
Honestly, I'm 100% a men's rights activist, but if they would say that every man who fathers a child, whether in marriage or outside of marriage, has 100% responsibility to provide for this child, financially, emotionally, being there for the child, I would 100% sign up for that. Like, give fathers the responsibility for the actions that they took. But the same for mothers. And I would be okay with a society where both parents are forced to be good parents to their children. I would be 100% in favor of that. And we have to get rid of no-fault divorce. We have to make divorce much, much harder. But even in cases where parents are not married, sorry, but they have to both look after the child, and they both have to be allowed to look after the child with equal rights and responsibilities.
Yeah, I think the idea of like I say, the deadbeat dads that they're criticised for deserting the post, which I think I'm fine, absolutely, I would be equally critical. But the other question as well is that women have got a responsibility to basically, to put it bluntly, to choose to have sex with responsible men, and that's what the whole idea of marriage is. That you don't have sex until you found someone who's willing to commit permanently. You know them, and they're willing to commit permanently, legally, to be there as the father of the children. Now, if a woman says, I'm not going to bother with that, I'm just going to have sex with some random men, then okay, you can blame the father, but the mother's also made very bad choices. And again, it's the culture of marriage. That's what marriage is designed to do. It's designed to prevent these problems for the benefit of children. Okay, it helps the adults as well, but the primary point is so the children are brought up with mum and dad, and it maximizes that.
But I think we are still about 10 years away from that being debated publicly in the mainstream. I think we're probably about 10 years away from that, even within the conservative and right-leaning parties and politics, which brings us to our last segment.
It does, but so that's why we need the Scottish Family Party in the Scottish Parliament. Let's just have a couple of people in there talking about it. That would accelerate it. Before we go to the last bit, I just want to show you a quick video and invite your comments. This is a video of the two contenders to be leader of Alba, the Alba Party. Now, the reason I'm showing it to you is that they're both trying to claim that Alex Salmond from Beyond the Grave is supportive of them as leadership candidate. And it's well, see what you think of it. Now, Kenny McCaskill, he talks about being on Alex. I was alongside Alex on his journey. I heard him talk on another occasion. I think he was a pallbearer at Alex Salmond's funeral. So he carried the coffin. And so he's basically making the point, I journeyed with Alex Salmond on his final journey. And so I could carry on the journey into the future. So I should be leader. I mean, it's getting a bit cult-like. Anyway, see what you think. Here we go.
That to me, because I don't think he anticipated that being an issue. What he did say to me is that he wanted me to put myself forward for the deputy leadership at the conference. And his view on that was that you couldn't have the only parliamentarian in the whole party not in the top leadership team.
Kenny, that would have meant going up against you. Was that something Alex Salmond discussed with you?
Never discussed it. You know, we had a meal, his wife and my wife and Alec, shortly before he went away to North Macedonia. All those who know Alec well, his family, his sister, his niece, his wife, have all endorsed me. I think they knew who had Alec's back, who spoke out for him, who was with him right the way through that journey, and that was me.
What do you think of that?
That it looked a little bit like from a sketch, from a comedy show. So I'm looking forward to that being mocked. In Germany, we would call that Leichenfledderei, which means tearing apart the corpse and trying to get the best bits of the corpse. It's a bit ghoulish. And it reminds me. It looked like as if a will was being opened, and they are fighting over the who gets what. So not dignified at all. Not a good.
It's as though Alba has, which I always thought it was like a personality cult.
Sure, it was.
I mean, I guess a great leader will inspire devoted followers. And I think Alex Salmond attracted a lot of devoted followers, particularly in the lead up to the independence referendum. And are still his devoted followers. And so what's most important in the situation is not like who's the best leader. It's what did Alex like?
What did Alex say? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say I think it's no secret that Alba is, well, to be honest, should they still exist? Because it was the party that was created because Alec was kicked out of the SNP, or he had to leave the SNP. So that's the only reason why Alba exists.
But there's still a logic that they played the system on the list. It increased the number of independence MSPs. I can't see it happening. I think before, the publicity they got was because if Alex Salmond says something, then that's a news story.
Yeah.
But now they haven't got that. Right, we'll get on to our last topic in a minute, but just quickly, I will just remind people of events coming up. Friday night, we're in Kirkwall. You can find all this on social media. Friday night, we've got a meeting in Kirkwall. Saturday lunchtime-ish, we've got a meeting in Thurso. Saturday night this week, we've got a meeting in Inverness. And then 3rd of April, the meeting in Kirkcaldy. And 7th of April, we've got a meeting in Dundee. So if you can make it along to those, we would be delighted to see you. Right, so Phil, our last topic, Unite the Right. Tell me about this movement idea, concept.
More question, because there are across the UK there are many right-wing parties, mostly very small parties. The only party that has big traction, obviously, is Reform. Now, I personally don't see Reform as a viable option with Nigel Farage as a leader. I never liked him. I think he's a spineless, a spineless weasel, I would say. So I think he throws people under the bus. I think he's immoral. I don't think he has really conservative views. I think he jumps on the bandwagon and so on and so forth. I don't want to make this too much about Nigel Farage. But obviously, people like Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib have been thrown under the bus. You, Richard, threw people like Tommy Robinson and Calvin Robinson to some degree under the bus, or let's say you were critical of them. And there is a lot of distancing between socially conservative and right-wing parties, and I think for good reason, because I think that not everybody can agree on everything, and different parties have different focus. Some people are very focused on migration, other ones are focused on, like we are, on socially conservative issues. But on the left side, you have a huge hodgepodge of communists, socialists, Greens, Muslims, gays. They obviously they don't see eye to eye at all on anything, but they're on the same side and they fight for the same political side. And I really think that the right and conservative people have to do the same thing. And I think people have to bury the hatchet and have to accept that there will be people on your side that you disagree with. So I wouldn't have any problem with people calling me far right. I would call myself far right, even though I'm in my temperament and the way I live very liberal. So I'm a very liberal person by temperament, but my politics, I would say, are far right. I'm in favor of zero migration, like zero, none. I'm in favor of mass deportation, and I'm well aware that mass deportation would lead to violence. And I'm not happy about it, but I think in some ways I'm a political realist. And to me, the only other option is losing Europe, losing the UK. Now I want to know from you, what do you think is the future? Because while I think that the Scottish Family Party is a very important voice, I think in the future at one point we need to be one voice of many, just like, for example, in the Christian church, you have many different denominations, but they're all Christian. And as long as they are dedicated to follow the Bible, I would accept them as Christians if they throw the Bible under the bus and put up LGBT flags rather than a cross on the wall. Then I would say you're probably not Christian anymore. What are your thoughts?
I guess my first thought would be, people are talking about uniting. The first thing I'd say is the family party, in lots of ways, we're not on the right-left spectrum. We're socially conservative. I guess someone would have a hard job to make out we were a fundamentally left-wing party. A lot of our policies are associated more with right-wing politics than left-wing. But I think the idea of uniting the right, the first thing I say, if you look at reform, that's what reform's tried to do. They've tried to be a bit broad tent. So in a sense, they're trying to reach in to the right-wing half of the Conservative Party. They've tried to cover that. And they're also trying to cover the most right-wing people as well. They're trying to bring all that together in a big election-winning coalition, but it doesn't work because it's too broad. It's too broad. The people with the most right-wing views.
I disagree. I agree because I think that they open themselves to the left and dramatically limit themselves to the right. So for me, for example, Tommy Robinson is not a controversial person at all. I think everything that Tommy Robinson said is well within the not even the far right. So to me, Tommy Robinson is not far right. He's just on the right. And the fact that Reform, they have kicked so many people out of the party that are just center right, but have invited people that are center left, that to me, they're not a right-wing party. And I think saying that the Scottish Family Party is not on the right, definitely not saying far right, but on the right, I think is disingenuous. Even if you don't think that you're on the right, the left definitely thinks that you're on the right.
Yeah, they will. Yeah, that will always be the case. But I think with reform, there's two separate questions. One question is, how do they fulfill their ambitions to get elected? Nigel Farage wants to be prime minister, so they'll have all their analysts and statisticians, their mountains of research, and they're working out the tactic of what message to put forward, what set of messages in order to win an election. And their advisors will be telling them, you need to stay within these bounds. So that's one question, political strategy. The other question is whether or not the party represents what it ought to represent. Now, I think Nigel Farage is absolutely being driven by strategy to become prime minister. So he's willing to sacrifice anything and everyone.
100%. But the thing is, I think the time for politicians is over, and I think people want authenticity. Can you say it, please?
Authenticity.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So the people want real people. They don't want politicians, and because they have been betrayed so often, they don't want another career politician, and that's why Nigel Farage, even if he becomes prime minister, he will disappoint people. He will betray people every step of the way, because he already has. And I think we need to think about, do we want to be elected, or do we want to save the country, society? Do we want to be truthful as Christian?
I think the argument there, though, that's an argument for reform, because reform are the ones who are making what they see as the necessary compromises to get elected.
No, that I no, because that is as a Christian, you cannot serve the kingdom of God through lying. It's impossible, because by lying you will destroy your soul. You will destroy the kingdom of God, or you will keep yourself from entering it. You cannot, like, I think if you gain power through lies and through betrayal, then you haven't gained anything.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
So even if you win, you will have lost, because you lost.
Right, that's a good point. Okay, so some other responses. I think at the extremes of politics, when I say extremes, that's not to criticize them. That's descriptive, not pejorative. At the extremes of politics, you get more and more opinionated people who are harder and harder to unite. So that's why you get massive fragmentation on the far left, and you get massive fragmentation towards the far right as well, because it tends to be characters who will fall out over things and will be quite hardline, dig their heels in, and fragment. And the solution to that, I think, often is for one party to get the momentum, so that the other smaller parties eventually give up and think, oh, there's no point just carrying on our little thing. Look, they're the ones that have got a bit of momentum. We may as well just go and join them. And I think that happened on a massive scale with reform before the general election, but it's now falling to bits again.
Yes.
Lots of people are saying, we decided to do that, but this hasn't worked out the way we liked, and it is fragmenting. Okay.
See, I think everybody should think about what is most important to them. Why are people in politics? And if a person is in politics because of their ego, then I think you shouldn't be elected. I think you should have a goal in mind, and that goal should be the benefit of the country, or the benefit of society as a whole. And then you should look at other people who might have a big ego and stuff like that, and just say, look, I can recognize that you are fighting in the same direction, and even though I don't agree with everything you say, we work in the same direction, and we should recognize that while we are rivals, we're not enemies, because we have a common goal. And now I'm not saying so. So I would encourage, for example, events where different right-leaning parties that move in the same direction, where they present themselves together and say, while we're different parties and we have different focus, we work in the same direction. And I think that would be better for the momentum rather than infighting. I listened to a couple of interviews with Nick Tenconi. He is the current leader of UKIP. They have so many leaders, it's hard to keep up. But he's the current leader, and he is a very outspoken Christian. He, on his Twitter profile or X profile, he calls himself Defender of Christianity and Conservative Values. Now, when I listen to his videos, I feel like you have no chance to become mainstream. So they can't win elections. I think as a personality is a little bit too much like Tommy Robinson. He's quite strong in his views, but I really like him. And I can recognize him as a fellow traveler. And though I wouldn't join UKIP, I appreciate that he's an outspoken Christian, and that that some of his values are in line with our values.
I agree with that. I think there are a lot of figures in this sort of sphere. Now, I think you disagree with me about this. I think there's a substantial number of them that I wouldn't want to associate with because they're disreputable for various reasons. I mean, someone in the comments there just mentioning David Curtin. I mean, I believe David Curtin is anti-Semitic. So for me, that's not a red line. I wouldn't work with him. But people like Lawrence Fox, I mean, I would probably sort of be on the same wavelength on a lot of things. But some of the things he says, the way he says them, the things he does, there'll be a red line. There'll be other people. I don't know much about this, the UKIP fella, but there are other people who I think we are roughly agreeing with this. On the other hand, just to say about UKIP, I had a look at their policies recently. Their abortion policy is fascinating. It's really interesting because it starts off with the most graphic description, gory description of an abortion, really graphic, and then it says, this is appalling. But then what are they going to do about it? They would make it compulsory that the baby be given an anesthetic before being killed.
Interesting.
And I thought that's really odd. Like, to be so strong about the horror of abortion, but then not to. It made me think that, I mean, UKIP are a very hardline party, but they feel it's too far to be straightforwardly pro-life. It was fascinating.
But I think that's, in some ways, I think that's why we need each other, because I think we are obviously, I think the Scottish Family Party migration is not one of our main concerns. It's not the one thing that we keep talking about.
Our policies are quite conservative on the matter.
Yeah, we have policies, but it's not what we run on. We are not the anti-migration party. Other parties are much more anti-migration. Now, we are much more the pro-life party, and I think if you bring people like leaders of parties, representatives of parties together on conferences, so that they actually cross-pollinate, so that they influence each other, so that everybody can move more honestly on a socially conservative and I would say also more in a right-wing direction, without being without feeling embarrassed about it. Like, honestly, I just don't want to be embarrassed about calling myself right-wing. I'm right-wing. And that's really fun.
I think we did an event like this, like you're describing. It's a few years ago now. We had Tom Laird from the. No, we didn't have. Did we have Tom Laird for the Libertarians? And we had someone from For Britain, who I'm not sure they still exist anymore. But yeah, I think one thing the small parties can do is to arrange events where we put people on panels and have discussion, because we're excluded from that. But what I would really like to do is to organize events and get panelists from the mainstream parties and from the the parties are off the left-hand side of the spectrum as well. I've tried to do that on multiple occasions. It's quite difficult to do, but yeah, I think having those conversations.
While I definitely see the usefulness and need for that as well, I think what we need at the moment is a feeling of community, a feeling that if you are against the mainstream, you're not isolated. And in England, there are these rallies. I think they are called Unite the Right, where people like Carl Benjamin from the Lotus Eaters and Father Calvin Robinson and other people are speaking. And I think it would be great for us to have a presence there. I think you would probably feel that it is a little bit too controversial, but you're standing in front of abortion clinics because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And I think the time for being squeamish and for keeping, you can keep distance. You can say, with some of the people I strongly disagree with, just because I'm on the same event does not mean I agree.
Yeah.
And I think we have to overcome these these boundaries. When I was at an anti-lockdown event in Edinburgh, and then I was approached by some organization. They were ethno-nationalists, so they were against interracial marriage and stuff like that. We have to keep the gene pool clean, and I know that would be an absolute no-go for you, not a no-go for me. I had a lovely conversation with them. I said, look, I tried to find somebody from my own cultural background, didn't work. They're all feminists. Now I have an African wife. All the best to you. And we had a good conversation. And to be honest, I understand the arguments, even from ethno-nationalists. Now, I don't want them to gas my children, but I understand what they're afraid of. They are afraid.
I'd say the other side of the coin for that is to look at our potential support in Scotland, and I think our potential support, a lot of it is among Christians. Maybe not desperately politically aware, but mainstream. It's among Christians. I think our potential support in large amounts is not going to come from getting people from other small parties.
No.
Whereas if we have associations with disreputable groups,
no, for me, the point is not taking voters from other parties. I think you have to win people over just with your arguments, not by like snatching them away. That is not my point. My point is not like draining other parties. My point is that parties that broadly move in the same direction should recognize that and say while we all have different views here and there, we are fellow travelers. That's that. And because I mean, it feels lonely out there in some ways. Like when you recognize how few people are really against abortion, but then you will have some people that are not on board with this amount of abortion, and that is already better than those who are absolutely in favor of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I've got one last little point. It's quite a few people asked about David Curtin. I won't go into that anymore. I've mentioned it on a YouTube video a while ago. I can maybe talk about it next week. But just to conclude, I was talking to someone the other day, and they were saying to get anything right wing done in Britain, you need to vote Labour because they can do it. So the Labour Party can cut welfare, they can slash immigration, and it's sort of okay because they're the Labour Party. But I think the Conservative Party are right with it. They can't do it because the media and the Labour Party absolutely slaughters them, and they don't do it.
I agree, and I actually predicted that. I said when Labour win, I thought that illegal migration would go down because they can do it without being criticized by the media. Now
by themselves.
yeah, and by themselves, correctly. But is the political will there? That's the other question. But you're 100%, this guy who made this comment is 100% correct.
Yeah.
Labour is now putting stuff in that I completely agree with, and they are far less criticized. They are criticized from within their own ranks, but that's about it.
Yeah, I think reality is biting. It's not what they want to do, these things, but reality is biting. Anyway, time has flown by. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching a fascinating discussion with Phil as ever. Tune in next week. Phil, you need to come back sooner. It seems like quite a few weeks since you've been on. So thanks very much for your chat. Thanks for watching, everyone. Good night.